Marketing That Works is the podcast for business owners who want to move their brand forward so that they can bring in more sales and clients. I'm Danielle Harris, and I'm bringing you what I know from more than 12 years of experience in traditional and online marketing. I have created marketing strategies for businesses of all sizes, from multi-million-dollar corporations to early-stage online businesses. Remember, some marketers chase fads. I believe in mastering the fundamentals. Your expertise deserves a bigger stage, but figuring out how to actually book speaking gigs and turn them into real clients, well, that can be frustrating and overwhelming. So in today's episode, I'm talking with Monica Rivera, who has spoken at over 100 companies in just the past 3 years alone, including the New York Times and TEDx. And today, Monica is going to break down her surprisingly simple framework for securing speaking opportunities, even if you're just starting out. She shares exactly how to convert those speaking engagements into actual clients and why relationship building beats perfect pitches every single time. If you're ready to get more visible this year, this is the episode for you. You're going to want to use this as a resource over and over again. So get your notebooks out, get ready to take notes, because this is going to be a good one. All right, y'all, enjoy. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this very amazing interview that we're about to have. I'm joined with Monica today. I have been connected with her through our mutual networks for a little bit now, and we've talked before and we had such gems of things that we needed to talk about, and I, through one thing or another, we were just actually, let's do this again. Let's have another talk and conversation. And so I'm so happy that we're able to connect again and have this conversation. Monica, please give us an introduction of who you are, your background, and then we can get into this conversation.
First of all, thank you so much for having me and sharing your community with me. I'm excited to have this conversation. So just a bit about me. My name is Monica Rivera. I have spoken at over 100 companies and communities just in the past 3 years. I have spent 20 years in marketing, working across campaigns in Fortune 500 companies. And now I'm on a mission to support other women who are business owners or corporate professionals with my expertise, which is helping them become more visible leaders through public speaking, storytelling, and visibility.
Thank you so much for that. And I know that there are a lot of people in my community that are thinking about, how can I be on more stages? How can I be the type of person that uses speaking to really fuel my business in the way that I want it to be fueled? And so thinking from that area, I think a lot of times the first question that people have is, how do I get started with a speaking career? How do I get my first clients through doing that? How do I even get to those stages? And so tell me a little bit of how you got started and what are some of the things that you tell people to start doing if they are looking to have speaking as one of their things that helps to fuel their business.
All right, I love this question. So if you're listening, grab a notebook. There's going to be so many things here. Put it on slower speed because you're going to want to hear this. So I'll tell a little bit about my journey. I mentioned before that I've been in marketing for 20 years. And one of those things in marketing, one of my last companies was in marketing technology. And when I was at that role, I worked with a lot of people who were mathematicians and data scientists and engineers. And what I learned is that they will create these incredible products. But when they tried to sell it to the rest of the business, they used a lot of jargon. They used a lot of tech speak. And I would watch the people in the room and their eyes would sort of glaze over because they didn't understand what they were talking about. But my skill set has always been in storytelling. I've been speaking, I feel like, since I came out the womb. I've always done this from pre-K graduation to fifth grade and up. And so it was always something that was kind of a natural ability for me. And so I realized in order to get ahead in that company, I saw this need that existed, which was to help use storytelling to sell these wonderful tools that they had created to other people within the business. So that is how I started to kind of hone my voice when it came to corporate speaking. And then I got this itch, and I'd been in my corporate role for a really long time. And I thought, I can't believe I'm going to do this for the next 25 years. There has to be something else. And I decided to go into podcasting. This was back in 2017. Didn't know anything about the forum other than that I was a listener, but I didn't know how to produce a podcast, edit a podcast, any of those things. But I learned. I went to Google University and YouTube grad school and all of those things to figure it out. And I also put myself in the rooms with people who knew more than me. So I started to attend different podcasting conferences. And in those conferences, I met people. I met the organizers specifically. I met people that were leaders in the space. And then I just asked the question, can I speak on your stage? Now, I know for some people, this might feel like a very bold ask because so often we think we need to be fully prepared. We need to be fully qualified, or who am I to get up on stage? But if you know anything about me, I've never been afraid of the word no. And I realize the worst thing they could tell me is no, or not yet, or maybe next year. And so I asked the question, and I was given my first speaking engagement outside of corporate at a conference called Podfest, which still goes on to this day, goes on every January. It's an independent conference for podcasters. And I was given something that they call a pechakucha, which is a 7-minute talk. And it's a 7-minute talk, and you can choose any topic you want. And this was my first chance, if you will, to get out there and speak under my own name. I wasn't speaking on behalf of a company, I was speaking on behalf of myself. And I went there. I followed this person that had this huge personality. He was a phenomenal speaker. And I thought, maybe I should run. Maybe I'm just going to pretend that I'm sick. I'm not going to do this. And I followed him. And I just delivered the talk that I knew I wanted to deliver my way, not emulating anybody else. And I had a standing ovation, and people were waiting for me to talk to me outside of the room. And that was the initial immersion into public speaking as this form for my business that was outside of anything I had done in the marketing world.
There are a couple things that I want to mention with this. So, as you were listening to this story, I think a couple things that might have come to mind. A, she had a marketing background. And I think that for some people might say, like, but that's not me. I don't have that background. I don't have that background experience. So, I want to acknowledge that, and we'll circle back to that point later. Another thing that I want you all to really pay attention to was that she put herself in rooms and networked. And so a lot of times, a lot of the things that I hear from people is, I don't even know where to start, where to get started, where to go for that. The top thing, it sounds from her story that she just told, was that she put herself in rooms and started to connect with people for the opportunities that she wanted. And so I do have a podcast episode about, using networking as a way to lead your business. So go back and listen to that. But it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Monica, like you just connecting and talking to people was like that first entry into that. Even if you didn't, like you said before, it's like, oh, know more, have more, accomplished more, but knowing the people and having them see your face on a regular basis and being in similar spaces is the first step to getting those opportunities. So can you speak to me a little bit more about, just finding those opportunities, being in the rooms? What are the things that you look for when you're deciding, okay, I want to be in these spaces, I want to go and have these different opportunities? What is the first thing that you're looking for when you're deciding, like, I want to be on this stage, I want to go and do these things? What are the spaces that you put yourself into so that those opportunities are going to be more likely to come your way?
Absolutely. And it's a really great question. So first, I always say the most important thing when I'm working with my clients is we have to figure out what the vision is for your business. So where do you want to be in the next 18 months, the next 24 months? And for me, when I was starting back in podcasting, I knew I wanted to be a more known podcaster. I wanted people to listen to my show. I wanted to be in all the different countries. And that was my first initial goal, to create something for myself outside of my marketing background, outside of the companies that had hired me, as sort of a proof of concept to myself, honestly, Danielle, that I could have a business. And so I said, if my vision is to do this, then I need to be in podcasting conferences around people that are going to help get me there. And so it did require an investment upfront, but that investment was so small considering the gains that I received on the back end. And so I just simply identified different podcasting conference. I went to Orlando. I flew, and I'm in the New York area. So I went to Orlando. I went to LA. I went to DC. I went to Philly. And I went to all of these major conferences and introduced myself. I also spent time continuing to hone those relationships online. So the people that I met, I didn't just let it be a one and done. I spent time in online communities continuing to nurture those relationships so that people knew my name. Because the most important thing I think for any business owner to do, aside from mastering communication, is making sure you have a personal brand that speaks to how you want to be known. So it is up to you to first cultivate that brand and then make sure that when people are saying your name in rooms that you're not in, they're saying the things you want them to say. And so often we don't think, is it matching what I think people are saying about me to what they're actually hearing? And so that was really important to me to make that investment, not only in going to these events, in honing my craft, in meeting the right people, but also nurturing the relationships so that my business could continue to grow.
I think that's such an amazing point. I think one of the things that people say, you need to go and be in different rooms, and that doesn't necessarily always mean that you need to fly across the country. If you have the ability and the resources to do that, like, absolutely go to these conferences and do exactly what Monica suggested. But if you were also just like, okay, but I don't have the time, I don't have the money to be going and doing all of those things, there is always a local community where you can go and be active in to be able to speak on stages like that. So there are chapters of various organizations. There's women's leadership groups. There are professional leadership groups. There are some type of groups of people, gathering of people, where you can be able to be in rooms and do that. And that's something that I've definitely helped my clients with, of trying to figure out what are those spaces that make the most sense. But to your other point, Monica, is the fostering the relationship. So I think a lot of times when it comes to promoting yourself and your business, a lot of what people see is the posting on social media portion of it, or the speaking on stage portion of it. But there's a whole other back end portion where you are really facilitating a relationship with people, and whether it's to speak on a stage, or even as we're about to go to the next part of, like, nurturing leads and nurturing a relationship with those people. That's the second portion of it, and it's not just the, like, I got a podcast episode up or I'm speaking on the stage. There's a whole second half of that I think a lot of people aren't spending enough time talking about. So thank you so much for that aspect of that,
If I
Monica,
could
because
add
I
one
think,
thing,
yeah.
also, if I may, as a marketer, because we're speaking marketer to marketer, so many times people focus on the tactics, right? I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to post on social media, and this is how many times I'm going to show up. But then when you ask, what is the bigger vision for your business? They don't always have that question, or how does this post fit into the larger strategy? So I knew for me, one of the areas or tactics that I was going to use to grow my business, in addition to things like social media, was going to be public speaking. So I was very intentional about leveraging my skill set and my talents that I had in this area. And it's going to be different for everyone. As some people start with a podcast, that might be the way that they do it, and then they branch out from there. For other people, they're going to be fantastic at writing. So I would emphasize, lean into the things that also feel easier to you, because that's going to be more organic and you're going to want to show up more for that. I always say it's easier to play to our strengths than it is to try to correct any weaknesses or perceived deficiencies. And so if you feel like you are good at communicating, or you're interested in improving because there's already some raw talent there, then leverage that, because it is a game changer for your business.
I agree. There are so many people that are saying, like, man, I feel like I really need to be doing this, because they see or they're surrounded by other people that are doing something very similar. And so they believe that that's the only way to do this. But I know that, as us as marketers, we know that there are so many different ways to get the same result across. It just leads into, like, what is going to be your strength, or what is your strength, and also what are the places that your people are going to be at.
Right.
And I know a lot of people in my audience, yes, they are going to be on social media, but they are also going to be at different in-person events. That's where people were at before the pandemic, and now that's we're several years removed from the height of it, because COVID is still around. But people are going back into those times where they were going and they were traveling, or they were doing events and things of that nature. And so that's where people are definitely going back to and focusing on. So people are going to be there. One of the things that, Monica, I think that you've done a really good job with doing is being able to build up your business through speaking. And I think a lot of times when I work with clients, one of the things that they are always trying to do is, how do I get more people to notice me? How do I get more people to start working with me, to be recognizable, so that, I can have this influx of clients coming in. I know that one of the ways that you've been able to build up your business is through speaking. So tell me a little bit more about, when you go through and you are talking with these people and you are able to get on stages and start speaking, how are you then able to use being on a stage and then leveraging that to actually grow your business?
Absolutely. So there's three ways to think about being on a stage. You can buy a stage, borrow a stage, or build a stage, right? So those are really the three ways, and I'll go through each of them. So you can buy a stage. So you can really buy your space on a conference stage or at an event. Let's say you want to sponsor the event. Usually, in exchange for sponsoring, the organizer or facilitator may give you 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes on stage. That's one way to do it. I personally, I've never bought onto a stage, but it's an option for people that I want to know that that's available to them. If someone decides to do that, I would have a set of criteria to make sure you're getting your ROI on that, your return on investment for that, but we can talk about that or not if you want to. The second thing is to borrow a stage, and this is when you're invited to speak on someone else's stages. And so there's two ways, or more than two ways, honestly, to get paid for that. One, you can actually get paid by the organizer, or for me, I speak both in company, so I speak in corporate, and then I also speak in conferences and communities. So there's a couple of other options you have here. And so I want people to really see that there's so many ways to think about public speaking. So when you're invited to speak on a stage, you can either get paid by the organizer. You can also do something called selling from the stage. So let's say they haven't paid you, but they are okay with you talking about your business, your services, your product. So you can add that into the presentation, into your speech, not in a way that it feels like a complete sales pitch, but in a way that feels really seamless and that you are in service to your audience. If you do that well, people will be waiting to talk to you when you get off stage and wanting to work with you, wanting to buy a product, wanting to sign up for your service. And it's all about mastering the art of public speaking. So often I get questions on the business of it, but the art of it is what's going to make you a lot of money. The second option, or the last option, I should say, is when you build a stage. We think of public speaking as we're invited onto the stage, we have the pretty pictures and the videos, and someone's in the audience taking Instagram stories of you. But truly, every time you open your mouth, if it's on an Instagram story, if it's on a live, if you're on whatever your social media of choice is, that is essentially the stage that you are building. And if you have the correct messaging and the correct positioning, and you also learn storytelling techniques, you can also use that as your stage to start to build your business into new heights. And so those are the three ways to really think about stages. And then there's so many different permutations as to how you can get paid as a result of that and build your leads and continue to grow your business. And so whether we're talking top of the funnel, which is brand awareness, or actually conversions right after you get off the stage, it is all possible. But the first thing you need to do, even before you start pitching yourself, is to have a message that is clear, that isn't just about you, but is connected to how you can serve your audience.
No, that's such a big thing. I know that I was talking with a potential new client just yesterday, and we were talking about the bank of speeches and the talks that she already has right now. And one of the things that I was noticing and looking at was, how direct and how specific they were and how compelling. And as you were talking about, as far as like the art of public speaking, the art of, being able to tell your message and your story and then use that to then convert, whether it's to more speaking opportunities or converting that into, people working with you in your package or service, whatever it is. I think it all starts with, what is that compelling piece that gets people to say, ooh, like that's interesting, that could be relevant for me. And so going to, saying whether you are creating your own stage or, borrowing the stage, what are the things and the elements that people should really keep in mind if they want to use that as a compelling way that people are even going to be interested in, whether they're applying for a speaking position or they're being invited. What are some of the elements that makes a talk really captivating, that says like, ooh, this is a topic that sounds really good or really interesting? What are some of the things that you suggest for people to do to keep in mind as they are trying to decide that, yes, this is the avenue that I want to do to grow my business? How do I make it sticky that people say like, yes, I want to actually listen to this person talk?
Yeah, so I want to liken it to when people apply for roles. They might have one resume and they send that same resume out to everybody, and they just sort of hope that this resume is going to land in some specific inbox and then they'll get the call for the interview. Or there's the other school of thought where you tailor your resume according to the job that you're looking for and you make it more specific. So we're going to take that same approach when we're thinking about where we're applying and who we're reaching out to and pitching ourselves to. Because it doesn't always have to be a formal invitation. You can also pitch to other people every single day of the week if that is something that you feel comfortable with, but you can also build that muscle. You can work with people like me, work with people like you to help actually build that muscle. One of the things that I would recommend to start with is don't try to be everything for everybody. And we talk about this all the time. The riches are in the niches. So think about specifically, what are you qualified to speak about? I once delivered a workshop and this man said, I can talk about anything. And I said, really, you can talk about anything? And he said, yeah, absolutely. I said, can you talk about hair care products specifically designed for women of color? And he said, well, I guess if I Googled it, I could probably do it. And I said, no, you are not doing service to the person that is hiring you by just Googling something quickly and slapping it together and feeling like you are qualified to speak on this. And so it's that sort of bravado that you want people to invite you back. The easiest way to get more business and to grow as a speaker is to be invited back. And so when you go and try to be everything to everyone, you water down not only your expertise, you're not as potent, and again, you're not as specific. You want to be known as the person that can speak about this. That is the thing you want to be able to do. So first, figure out the message that you are qualified to speak. What is the problem that your business is solving right now? And think about who needs that message. And then once you have that idea, and it can be an idea you can pre-sell based off of a title and an abstract and maybe some key takeaways, then go out to audiences that align with that message. So instead of spraying and praying and hoping that anybody says yes to you, really think about how your message is going to serve their audience, and it becomes a much easier yes than you just trying to fit in a circle into a square peg.
And I think a lot of times what I hear or see people doing right now is saying, like, okay, it's this conference. Okay, I'm thinking of talking about something along these lines. And through the help of ChatGPT or something else, they're going through and trying to really put together a pitch that's going to be interesting and captivating. So, without going necessarily into like all the pros and cons of that, but what are, I'm just thinking, for example. So I tend to work with a lot of leadership coaches, say for instance, or even life coaches, and they say like, I want to be the person that's invited to like women's leadership summits and things of that nature. And so they go through and they have a talk, and it's just, and say they're in the wellness space of like, how to overcome anxiety, and you're just like, great, how to overcome anxiety. Like anybody, like that's super broad and super vague, but there's a difference between how to overcome anxiety of how to overcome anxiety as a new mother and you're talking to a women's group, or how to overcome anxiety as a new mom and a caretaker. Like that's even more
Mm-hmm.
specific for things. So when you're thinking about that niching down and that being specific, what are some of the tactics that you tend to work with and have people kind of go from like that super broad and vague to like very very niche down and specific? How, is there an example that you can think of how you took a person from, yeah, this is a great idea, there's nothing wrong with it, to like, but this is going to get you invited to a lot of places and back again and again?
Absolutely. So the first thing is don't water down your message. And when you have so many talks, or you say, I can create a customized talk, You might not think it, but you are actually watering down your message as opposed to focusing on what I consider one to maybe three signature talks. So I have a client specifically. She's a former social worker. She works in the career space now. She has a full time role, but she's also a college and university speaker. And when we first started working together, I think she might have had 15 different talks that she offered. And so, as you can imagine, if she is getting booked, on Monday, she might be talking about one thing. On Wednesday, she's talking about something else. And there's slides and this and that. And yes, she is effective at delivering her talks and she was getting hired, but she was also feeling stressed. She was feeling burned out. She was feeling a little less organized in her body as to how she was presenting these talks. And so it's not delivering the same impact when you're watering down your message. And so what we did instead was say, okay, of these talks, let's think about it. Which ones are you getting hired for most? Where's the most demand coming from the audience? Which ones do you like delivering? Which ones do you want to deliver? Again, going back to that vision in the next 18 or 24 months. Does this align with where you see your brand and your business in 2 years? And so once we were able to really look at that and analytically look at it from the numbers of how she was getting hired, the results of what the response was after she left that stage, whether it's virtual or in person, and then also what she wanted to do, we said, okay, we're going to scrap the majority of these. We maybe stayed with two, but we created three new signature talks for her so that she can feel this is my sweet house, this is my sweet spot. This is what I want people to know me for. And then we start working on the script. So not just the slides, but the actual script so that she can learn this. And Danielle, when you have one or two signature talks that you are known for, that is where you start to see the acceleration happen. I delivered a talk about 6 months ago now, almost 7 months ago, and I am still getting calls and booking additional speaking engagements from that one talk. And I don't say this to brag, but I say this so people can know that the power of having a signature talk that you nail, that you know the beats, whether the lights go out in the room, whether all the tech goes away, but it is your signature talk, that is going to be what people remember. And they're going to tell their friends and they're going to tell their colleagues. And then you are going to start getting phone calls and emails to your inbox the same way that I do because people know you for that talk.
I think that's really the crux of it, of being able to be very specific and direct as far as how the talk that you give is going to get value, and it's going to get value for the people that are going to be in your audience listening, but also value for you as you want to grow your business. And so I think this is a really great transition point because you talked about how, this one talk was able to generate you leads for other speaking opportunities. And so I want to transition into, one of the things that you said before was, either selling from the stage, or whether it's not directly selling from the stage, but still positioning yourself so that people would be able to want to connect with you and then use that to generate business. So I think a lot of times people are just like, okay, I want to speak on a stage. I want to have people come in. I do want to have like a speaking arm of my business, but I also want to work with clients one on one. I want to get them into my services, and I want that to really fuel my business that I have going on. And so, with that being said, what are the mechanics that you put into place so that the talks that you give actually do fuel your business, where you do get clients coming in? What are the things that you do in your script? And then what are the things that you do on the back end so that you're really nurturing them from random audience member to person that you are working with over and over again?
So, one of the things I want to share is that we've all heard the concept of know, like, and trust. When you are on the stage, you are accelerating that know, like, and trust process because now it's not just a 30-second video that they're seeing of you on social media or an article that they may have read on your newsletter. They're actually getting to spend time with you essentially and see your personality a little bit more. And you have this captive attention for however long you're on the stage for people to really get a sense of who you are. So I spoke in 2024 at Arlen Hamilton's event, Your First Million Live. This was in Los Angeles. And I delivered a 20-minute talk. And it's hard to get into the mechanics in terms of how to structure the talk in order to have it convert. So there's so many elements to it that it's not really just one thing. It's not necessarily just an outline, but it's really kind of how you want to position yourself and the flow of it and where you're introducing certain messages and those types of things. But, and we can talk about this, or if anybody wants to work together, I encourage you to just book a call so we can talk about it. But in that talk, it was 20 minutes. And when I got off the stage, I had 5 people book consults that I had never met before. I had a ton of people that wanted to talk with me. And then I was still just recently talked to someone who booked time with me that heard me last year in 2024 and said, I remembered you on Arlen's stage. I saved up money because I wanted to work with you. And now I'm ready to book the call. It was because in those 20 minutes, I spoke to the pain points that people were feeling. And I talked about personal brand. I talk about how important it is to use your story as a vehicle to differentiate yourself. We are in a noisy world. We see the statistic actually reads that in a given day, we see 3 football fields worth of content. 3 football fields every single day of content. Think about how many scrolls that we are doing to amass that level of content. So you have to be able to stand out. And the way you are going to be different, so we're both marketers, but the way you and I are going to differentiate ourselves are going to be not only through our expertise, but also through our stories. And some people may want to work with you, some people may want to work with me, and that's okay. There's room for everyone. So on that stage, I not only talked about my story, but I positioned myself in a way that was going to serve the audience. Because if we just tell our story from our own place, that's not connecting to our audience. And then I really make sure that in every single point, I am thinking about that audience member and what is it that they need to hear? Why did they come to this event? And why are they choosing to listen to me as opposed to using the time to go get a snack or go to the restroom or check their phone? If they're going to stay listening to me, what is it that they want to hear? And that's really what I think about when I put my talk together.
Now, there's something that I always say is that you don't tell your story just for the sake of telling your story. You tell your story with a purpose. And for better or for worse, people always look at things and view things from the lens of how does this help me? Right. And so when you are giving a talk like that, and Monica, you did a really good job of honing that in, of speaking to the points that someone else will be thinking through. So, even during this conversation, when you were talking, I said a couple times, okay, there might be people that think, well, I'm not a marketing person, so I don't know if I can do this, or I don't necessarily have the money to go out and fly all over the place. Those are ways that I'm thinking about, okay, these are things or questions that might come to mind as someone is listening to something. And that's a skill that you can build up. And that's something that as you're telling your story, you'll say like, okay, well, I went through and I experienced this. What thing would come to mind as someone saying like, oh, well, how is this relevant for me? Or how is this going to be something that someone has a question about? Like, oh, well, they started off with this advantage or that advantage, or they did, like, those are the things that people like to look and view they view your experience through their own eyes. And so being able to point out and pull out, here are all the different steps and here are all the ways that I can address this, and this is how it's relevant for you. Here are the things that could apply to you. And you're so right, that's going to be the thing that as soon as you're able to kind of knock off, like, and I know that you have this thought and that thought and that thought, and then you knock all of those things down and people are just like, well, then you're right. There is no reason why I shouldn't, be in this person's world and want to have them help me, which I think is such a powerful thing to be able to do when you're speaking from the stage, when you are captivating in a way that's going to really compel people to decide, like, yep, this is something that I absolutely need. So my follow-up question to that is, when you are following up with people, what are the ways that you do things? Because I've seen people on stages say, connect with me online or download this thing. What are the mechanics of the things that you do, whether it's peppering it in throughout the entire talk or whether it's, in the call to action at the very end of the stage? Does it vary based off of what you're doing? What's your thought about that? How do you do that?
Sure. So making sure that you have opportunities for connection throughout your talk are going to be really important. And this is going to differ whether or not you have technology. So you might not always have slides. I'm delivering a workshop in a couple of weeks where I won't have any slides. And so to deliver a workshop, you have no slides and it's just you is a little bit more challenging. So you have to figure out, how am I going to capture the leads in the room that want to work with me? Because as we know, people can be so enthusiastic, but afterwards they say, oh, yeah, I'm going to connect with you. And then things happen. We lose a business card. We thought we saved this message in our phone and we don't have it. So one of the things I do, if it's an event where I don't have technology and there are no slides, I will have people text a number with a word, and then they're able to get added onto my email list. So I'll be able to give them something for this. So it might be a PDF to follow along with the talk. And in exchange for that PDF to follow along, they will then give me their email address. And so they'll be added to my list. And that's a way for us to stay in contact. If I'm in a place where I have technology available, there will be QR codes embedded within my slides. And it won't be everywhere, but there will be at times. So don't just save it for the beginning or for the end. Those are mistakes that people make. In the beginning, they don't know you. So they don't know if they want to connect with you. So once that title slide goes by, you could have missed the opportunity with them. At the end, again, if you're rushed for time, if someone else is controlling your slides and then that slide quickly goes away and the person, oh, I missed it. You don't want to just save it for the end. You want to have it somewhere in the middle where people can connect with you. And so you can even do something like, oh, I see a lot of people are taking pictures of slides. I want you to stay really present with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move to the side, take out your phone, capture this QR code right here. You're going to be able to get all the information that you need, and then you're going to be able to stay with me. That's a very easy way to be able to do that, and make sure it's in the middle of the presentation so that people are able to get onto your list and you can continue to build connection with them.
That's a really good tip for that. And so then afterwards, after you've gone through and you have these leads that they've either downloaded the PDF or they've been able to get the actual slides that you have, what is your thought about following up? Is there a sequence that you take people through? Is it just a like, hey, so happy that we connected at such and such conference, and like another email going through? Like, how do you nurture those people?
It depends on the size of the audience. So I've spoken in rooms where there's thousands of people, and that's a little bit harder. So that'll be more of an email list. I'll tag those people that come into my list and then send a separate email. If it's a smaller event and I meet people one on one, or even some larger events where I meet people one on one, I will make a note afterwards so that I can connect with them and I can talk about something that they may have mentioned to me, a story that they may have shared with me, a question that they might have had. And so those are some of the things that I do to continue to facilitate those relationships. I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to people. Everyone has different ways that they want to market their business, they want to show up in their business. But I say I'm the coach and the strategist that you can't get rid of. At the end of our time together, I still send messages to follow up and check in with my clients. Even though we might not be working together anymore, to me, I see it as you'll always be my client and I'm invested in your progress. We've shared this time together in this space. And I can check in once a month, every 3 months to just see how you are. And sometimes maybe someone will come and work with me again. But truly, it's more about the human experience that we're having. And we are working really intimately together. I worked with a client just yesterday on her TEDx speech, and it was a final draft. And we spent 2 hours just combing through this speech to make sure that it was hitting all of the beats, that we were rehearsing and performing it in the way. So, of course, I want to know how it goes when she delivers that talk, even though this was a session and it was our last session together. But of course, I'm going to follow up to see how that goes when she delivers the talk. And so those are the things that at the end of the day, yes, we have businesses. Yes, we can say we're all busy, but we'll always be human. And having that human connection to me is the way that I've wanted to build my business.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've heard from, a lot of entrepreneurs is even the ones that you're just like, oh, they have like tons and tons of sales and they go through all of these things. It's always been that human connection. It has been the follow ups, those small quote unquote touch point, the small touch points of like, hey, it's like a voice note that I'm sending, or an email that's not just like a mass email, but a personalized follow up email that usually leads to whether it's a referral from someone or a direct, connection of being able to buy. That's going to be the thing. I think a lot of times people can get very much hung up on the technology side of automations and like all of these other things, but it's truly, if you're going to be able to do this, whether it's you're doing digital only or doing in person type of marketing activities, it's going to be the follow up. And I think that that's something that not a lot of people are really talking about. They're talking about all of these other tactics, but really marketing, the effective time that's going to get you the most results is going to be follow up. Follow up with people, nurturing, showing that you care on a regular basis. And if you're not doing that, you're not seeing the results that you want in whatever side of business that you're doing, it's probably one of those things. You're probably not following up enough with people. You're probably not connecting on a human level. And the people who are genuinely curious, and I was just talking to someone the other day, she said that I didn't realize how much following up and talking to people and just connecting on a human level was necessary and required to really hitting all of my goals. And she said the moment that she started to do that, she was starting to hit her goals, and that's going to be key. So everyone, please take that away as a touch point, as a follow up to do that, whether you don't have any ambitions of speaking at all because you're just like, I'm completely freaked out, I want to be digital only. Follow up with people.
And
Follow up with
always
people.
remember, you are always speaking to people. So even again, like if you're not public speaking in the traditional way that you think about it, you're still connecting with your people, even if you stay online, even if you never leave your house. As long if you go on a live, any of those things that I mentioned before, you're still connecting with them and you want that message to land. I'll also share, it's kind of a funny thing. I had a client who said, well, I don't want to spend time on social media. I just want to post and I want to leave, but no one's really connecting with me. And I said, oh, so you don't want to be social on social media, right? Your energy is, I don't want to talk to other people, but then you're upset that they don't want to talk to you, right? And so that's one of the things that we have to examine. I know that social media can be heavy. It can be a lot. It can be time consuming, all of the things. But it can also be really beautiful to develop these relationships and use it in a way that honors where you are, that doesn't stress you out, but spending 15 minutes a day connecting with people, I don't think you'll ever go wrong truly doing that. And I think it's also about the law of reciprocity. As much as we give in, I do believe that we get back. And so having again those touch points with people, those follow-up conversations, remembering details about people, I don't think you ever go wrong by doing that.
No, absolutely. And I worked with people who have been in business for years and years, people that were building businesses before social media was even really a thing. And you know what they were doing? They were talking to people, reaching out to people. I think that in the advent and the past 15 years since the blow up of Facebook and social media the way that it is, I think that we view reaching out and talking to people is just like, oh, that's cringe, or like that's just not how things are done. And I'm just like, that's how things have literally always
Yeah.
been done. And it's still a cornerstone of what needs to happen. It's just that with the advent of social media, you're able and have the ability to reach more people than initially you would have been able to in the past. So say back in the 90s, you were able to do, but it's still at the heart and the core of it is connecting with people. So I nothing else, y'all. Nothing else. Like do that portion of it. Monica, thank you so much for all of the wisdom that you were able to share during this. If there's anything else that you want to leave behind for people as we close this out, what is one thing that you want to take away, have people take away?
For sure. So I want to talk just a little bit about visibility. So many clients, either that I've worked with personally or I go into companies and people will pull me to the side and say that they want to be a leader, but at the same time, they have fear or imposter syndrome about showing up. Or should I talk about my accomplishments? Should I share these things? And I say, visibility isn't optional. In 2025 and beyond, it is essential that we show up in whatever way feels right to you, but people have to know that that you exist. And visibility isn't just about showing up, it's about showing up and speaking up. And when you put those two things together, that's when you start to see results that you want, whether you're a business owner, you're a career professional listening to this, even in your relationship. When you show up and you speak up, results happen. So if you feel like you're listening to this and thinking, well, I can't do this, or again, she had money to travel and go to all of these places, there were sacrifices that were made to go to those places. I got myself there, but what I was eating, I would bring cans from home in my suitcase so that I would have breakfast and lunch there. It wasn't bawling out when I was there. It was, I'm going to get myself into the room and I'm going to squeeze the juice from the time that I'm there. But it wasn't these lavish experiences because, again, I'm budget conscious. I knew what I was there for. And so, whether it's meetup.com to look at places, Eventbrites that have free events, your local library, there's so many places that you can find connection without having to go too far away from home if you're not able to do it. But visibility is a mandate. And I hope everyone that listens to this decides that they're going to connect with at least one person and raise their hand and be more visible.
That's such a good point. I know that I work with a lot of people who are looking at launching or looking at really putting forward and doing a bit concerted effort to the whether it's their one-on-one coaching or a service or anything of that nature. And I think that the visibility portion of it is a thing that really catches them at times. They know that they need to go out there and they need to do these things, but at the same time, they're just like, oh, I don't know how I can necessarily be out there. Or at the same time, if anyone is actually listening or caring. And I know that through the work that I do, and especially the work that you do, helping to overcome all of those things, show that you have something that's valuable to share and that someone is going to get so much benefit from that. So thank you so much for sharing of your time and energy. If people want to connect with you, what is the best way that they can go about doing that?
Absolutely. So, my corners of the internet are both LinkedIn and Instagram. So, whichever is your fancy, you can find me there. And that's where I'll spend some time. And if you want to email me directly so we can have a conversation, so I can support you wherever you are in your journey, whether you've spoken at a bunch of stages and want to figure out how to convert, or you're just getting started and want to overcome the visibility, send me an email. It's monica@youwannadowhat.com. I'm sure Danielle will have it in the show notes. And I would be delighted to talk to you about where you are and how we can help get you to that vision you have for your business.
Thank you so much. Yes, all of that information will be linked in the show notes. Monica, thank you so much for your time and sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom with us. I know that we will be talking again, but until next time, everyone, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
If you want more marketing that works right in your inbox, head to the show notes and sign up for the email list. You'll be the first to know how you can work with me on mastering your marketing.